Good afternoon. It's Friday, April 10th, and this is the Hammer Daily presented by FanDuel, normally hosted by Jason Cooper. Today, you're stuck with me, George Tsilfidis, Gstack George. We have a lot to talk about on today's show, including some NBA talk. We'll break down UFC 327 and give out some bets there as well. And I'll break down some UFL action at the end of the show, including two best bets. I won't be alone today. I have producer Mike Bennett keeping me on track today. I have a tough act to follow, though. Rob was cooking yesterday. Not only did he have a great take that Connor McDavid is the best player in NHL history, he also was talking hockey with the guys and said instead of taking Ottawa minus 300 or worse, whatever they were, he'd rather take an alt. He said maybe take them to win by 4+ at over 7-1, and sure enough, they came through 1-4. Before we start today's show, though, I got to say I love the Masters tournament. It makes my morning a lot peaceful. You have golf is the perfect background viewing. When you're prepping notes, you can just take a look at each shot, and there's a lot of in between, so you're not missing any of the action, and at the same time you're getting work done. And in between Masters watching, I've been reading The Beast from Dane Brugler, the most comprehensive draft preview, over 400 prospects. We got so much to talk about on the show, and I am looking forward to all your comments because I will be reading your comments. And just a reminder, I appreciate people who watch daily, but there's some people who are watching that aren't yet subscribed. Do us a favor. We're pushing for 5,000 subs. And if you're already subbed, do me a favor and ask people that you know are interested in betting content to maybe do the same. Check out the show. We're doing a lot of great things during the week, and 5 days a week, a daily show. There's not many out there. I was going to talk some NFL news solo, but you know what? Since I've got him here and he does talk NFL, our first guest today, NFL, NBA, and tennis handicapper, betting analyst for NBC Sports Bet, co-host of the Deep Dive podcast with Andy Molitor, Mr. Drew Dinsick. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and honestly, props to you if you can get work done when the Masters is on. You're one of the proud few. When it's on, it just wipes out my day.
You know what? Golf is one of the rare ones where there's just enough in between, and the announcer will tip you off when it's time to look. Baseball used to be, and then now baseball's sped up, and there's the in between is kind of gone by the wayside. But everything else, football, hockey, anything that's consistently going, even tennis, there's no real room to work in between action.
I know. It's going to be a crazy cut sweat today. Best guess is it's going to be +5 right now, looking at the way things are going to deteriorate as we cook this course throughout the day. But we're going to have all the major players, it looks like, for the weekend, which is fun.
Is there anything you're sweating in particular? I was watching the Masters extravaganza, and by the fifth guest, when I keep hearing the word Patrick Reed, I'm like, all right, I guess I got to be on Patrick Reed if everybody likes him. And 2 eagles yesterday was a pretty good start.
It's -5 on the front 5. He was awesome yesterday. He is swinging the club very, very confidently. I got a little outright on him, but most of my action is Calcutta skin, and right now my only realistic runner is Burns. So I hope he holds on. I don't know if he can, but he had a shockingly awesome day yesterday, and I would love to see him continue to hit his approach the way he did, because he's got the putter in his bag, and he didn't even putt especially well yesterday. So sweating some Burns.
Sam Burns is capable of putting it all together for a 4-day stretch. When he's on, he's on. I was going to ask you, Drew, because I had some NFL news I was going to filibuster by myself, but you came early. I saw some news, and I kind of wanted to run a couple by you. Kenny Moore and the Colts look like they're headed to a divorce, a nickel corner.
Yeah,
there's the Colts are being priced a little bit like with last season's optimism, the pre-Daniel Jones injury. And I just keep thinking to myself, first of all, the last 2 weeks before the injury, they kind of became solved. Their offense was less potent. Then you factor in the Achilles injury. They've lost O-linemen, some receivers. I can't wrap my head around why the Colts are still being priced as having a shot to win the division. Am I crazy to think that they're not anywhere close to the Jags and the Texans?
I agree with you. It's funny you bring up the Colts. I was doing weekly hits with Jason on this show all throughout the regular season last year. And like the only thing I think I hit that was like long shot, this could be crazy, was Colts to miss when they were like 8-1 or 8-2 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They were like 5-1 to miss the playoffs and hit some exact finished thirds at some huge prices. So I'm at risk of confirmation bias, right? It's like you hitting all that, like, yeah, I knew the Colts sucked. Well, I mean, Daniel Jones tore his Achilles, but that's kind of the important part of this. Daniel Jones tore his Achilles.
Yes.
I know it. He's not as old as Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers when they did theirs, but he's not a young man, and mobility is a huge part of his tool set. So
without it, he's not exactly the greatest pocket passer. It's like even more so than a Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, who also struggled in their returns, at least in the first half of their returns. Daniel Jones loses the mobility aspect, and I'd argue that makes this injury far more of a deterioration on his skill set.
Yeah. I think as we just kind of step back and look at what's going on there, I do think you have a head coach who is quietly in a little bit of hot water. I do think you have a GM who's quietly in a little bit of hot water. I do think you have an offensive coordinator in Jim Bob Cooter who's not especially good. You have a DC in Lou Anarumo who may have been a little bit overrated when he had some good seasons with the Bengals. He had a couple elite safeties, and that's why that was a good team.
Yeah.
So the coaching staff is number of question marks. GM's question mark for me. I don't know if Ballard's actually a good GM. And then when you look at like the current state of the roster, Alex Pierce and Josh Downs are quietly probably one of the better wide receiver 1-2 combos in the NFL. The offensive line is outstanding. There's really no red flags at all, other than I guess maybe right tackle Jalen Travis is a bit of a wild card. I don't know if he can necessarily give you better than replacement level for a full season. We'll see. Tyler Warren, elite. I mean, your pass catchers and your skill position group with Taylor, Warren, Pearson, Downs, off the top of my head, there's maybe nobody better, right? And so I think a lot of what you saw with Daniel Jones when it was going well was really more of a signal of, this offensive unit has so many outstanding pieces that it kind of can't fail. I'd solved is a reasonable question mark. Did they become a little bit too predictable with their sequencing and their scheme? Possible. I don't know that Shane Steichen really has got many more tricks up his sleeve, and not a Jim Bob Cooter guy. So I think it's a big kind of leap to say that they're going to compete with the best of the AFC South, which all of a sudden looks really competitive.
Titans, even the Titans are no longer a doormat. They've improved, whether you thought they spent their money wisely or not. Staying in the AFC South, the news comes out that Travis Hunter looks like they're going to make him a full-time corner. It felt like
hallelujah. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it felt like with all their weapons and like Parker Washington emerging and Jacoby Myers there, it felt like that was the only solution. That being said, man, like they paid a premium for a guy who they thought was a unicorn that could play both ways, and now they traded up, paid a ton of picks for a cornerback. Drew, do you think the dream of a two-way athlete like Shohei Ohtani is dead in the NFL? Or is this like a 1 year, let him get up to speed, let him get, physically capable of playing at an NFL level, and then they'll try to turn him back into a full-time player?
I think it's probably the latter. Considering the severity of the injury he's coming off of, it would have been suicidal for them to come into this year without a plan to kind of limit his reps. I'm glad that they're electing for a hair of caution, and they're playing him on the side of the ball where he's more talented. So yes. Good job by them. They did give up a lot to get him, and that will probably go down as a bad trade, even if he ends up becoming like borderline all-pro corner, which I don't know how likely that is. They needed corner though. They need him there. They need him to do well. Yes. That's a weak unit. And as we just mentioned, the wide receiver room for the Colts is awesome. The wide receiver room for the Texans is awesome. And it seems likely to me that the Titans, they have a good, not great wide receiver room. but they may be going wide receiver in the draft as well, for all we know. So they could end up being pretty strong also. So in division, you need, in this division, if you're going to repeat, you need strong cornerback play. So let's hope Travis Hunter delivers that for him. I would say right now it's a coin flip for me. Top of the NFC South between the Jags and the Texans, and I would say that both teams are flawed, but there's a meaningful gap between them and the Colts.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it is a 2-horse race. I like Liam Cohn as a coach. Absolutely. I don't always love the decisions that DeMeco Ryans makes. Now, this is the transition, Drew. So last year, NFL, I remember the Matt Stafford, Drake May market the last 3 weeks were just bonkers. It's every time someone played, the odds changed. And it happens in the NBA. Like, we have now ping-ponged from Cooper Flagg back to Con Knuppel as the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. He's minus 130 at FanDuel. I've always hated, Drew, that like if these sequence of games happened in January, we don't have this wide flip. And now it's like every game matters more. Like it's overweighted to the award in the last 3 weeks. That being said, the market has flipped twice now. Who do you think is going to win this award?
I think it's going to be Con, and I think it's going to be close. I don't see a huge edge at minus 140. My fare would be about minus 150. We have to set aside your opinion about this award to do a talking about betting it. Yes. But for the record, my opinion is it's not close. It should be Con. And I think I think that actually, but I do think that informs why he will win, which is to say, when people sit down and they're wrestling over this decision, they're going to pour over some of the advanced stats. They're going to pour over some of the traditional stats, and they all kind of point to Con, in my opinion. Con is doing something that is not just the best rookie season this year, but it's one of the best of all time in terms of efficiency, in terms of his ability to hit the three. I mean, he has set such a high bar, and that a record that probably will never be broken in terms of made threes for a rookie. He's leading the NBA in made threes. Do people know that? Like, it's absolutely bananas that his contributions have been so instrumental to a Charlotte Hornets team that finally is getting out of their own way and is going to probably punch their ticket to the playoffs. And, his contributions in terms of efficiency are so far beyond what Cooper Flagg has done. He has added 6 more wins in terms of estimated wins if you combine efficiency with his usage and his minutes played. That is a Grand Canyon size chasm, and ultimately I think is going to put wind in his sails to get this thing. I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to be a sweat, and I don't actually recommend that anyone bets this market because you're going to be miserable, and you're better off just finding some action in the play-in games or the playoffs. I will add one wrinkle to pay attention to and why it flipped yesterday, because sometimes like the flips are explainable, right?
Okay.
Cooper Flagg sets a record for 50, or Cooper Flagg scores 50 points in a night. Of course, he gets some wind in his sail, right? But why yesterday? Like, what happened? In my opinion, I don't think this was just people kind of shaping the market. No one really. There wasn't like a tranche of voters who came out and published pieces that were like, yeah, I'm Team Con. I think it was mostly people looking at the potential that voting might get delayed a little this year. Have you heard about this, by the way? Is this the first time you're hearing this?
That is the first time.
So there are numerous players who are filing grievances, basically, that they should get more games counted in there, or not be penalized for missing games because of existential circumstances and circumstances that shouldn't count against them. And so there's probably going to be like maybe even a week delayed before ballots are officially collected. They're usually collected the day after the regular season ends, that Monday before the play-ins are played.
Yeah.
And now there's realistically, they may get like an extra week, which means that people are going to probably see the play-in results and see the Hornets probably like qualify for the playoff field. And that might be a little bit of a tiebreaker in Con's favor. And I think that's possible.
I have a question for you. Is it because in Cooper's always been like one of the favorites to win since from the moment he was drafted. He was the
minus
favorite.
200. Yeah.
Yeah. And Khan was a bit of a longer price. So I
Mhm.
know some people holding long tickets.
Yeah.
Is there some of that when Cooper goes for 50
Yeah.
of like, I've got such a good Khan price, I'd be dumb not to put a little bit on Cooper to especially when Cooper was in that plus 400 range to secure a good profit on either side without taking out too much of your profit on Khan? Was there some of that happening and then it became, whoa, the Khan price is a little bit too good again?
I think I don't know everybody's circumstances, and I don't know how large of a position it has to be to move a market like this, as opposed to just being sort of the whims, right? Like people are hearing voters talking on ESPN saying I'm going for flag immediately on the heels of him scoring 50, right? My guess is it's more just people are trying to stay one step ahead of the narratives. Yeah. Most of the people that I know that had big Khan prices around the All-Star break, like right as flag was coming off of a meaningful injury break, they took flag at to cover themselves or took a little bit of profit at that point, because literally like that was like what happened was kind of spoken into existence many times. Like people were like, yeah, it's Khan, but if flag goes for like 40 and 50 in back-to-back games, like this could get real squirrely. And that's exactly what happened. I almost certainly I could find clips of folks who work for NBC on the NBC Peacock NBA broadcast, like saying that almost verbatim. Like this is close, and the minute flag does that, then game on. So I think in general the it's going to come down to a couple of voters. It's probably and it's wild too, because the straw poll that Tim Bontemps, I think Bontemps published the straw poll a week ago today. It was 80-20 Khan. It's like that's not like for that many people to change their opinions that quickly, it's going to be tough. So I think Khan ekes it out, but it's probably going to end up like 60-40.
All right.
This too, but you know this too because it applies to other sports. But like the other kind of blind factor here is that people don't want to look stupid in a couple of years. And they so they'll vote for a flag out of like,
I mean, that's the case.
He's going to be the better long-term prospect.
Yeah, the case is if he's going to be an all-time great or like a top 5 player in the NBA, they don't want him to not have that award in his in his resume.
Right.
Because like individual season, it's like Khan is very clearly the case. Now,
if he wanted that award in his resume, you know what he should have done? Should have played better.
What would the team have played better helped his case? Was it individual play, or was it, listen, you're just on a team that's not good enough and you're getting taxed a little for that?
The team put him in the wrong role for the first month of the season.
Okay.
That was kind of head scratching. It took them until mid-November, late December before it was like, okay, Nemhard, you're going to be our primary ball handler, not flag. And then, I mean, the Mavs in general stinking to the point where, they were clearly incentivized to tank did not help their case. But no, I didn't. I don't think he played especially well this year. He had some huge scoring productions, but his efficiency stats and what he means to a spread right now is significantly less than Khan. It just is.
He's accumulating counting stats, but it doesn't feel like he's playing
a lot of empty calories.
Yeah, I love it. Empty calories. What a great analogy. All right, let's talk about end of NBA betting year. Does this become like throw out your model and it's like just treat this like preseason, hawk the news, and try to beat information? Because it just feels like some of the spreads are outrageously large. There was a day where like there was all blowouts last week, and it doesn't feel like normal NBA right now. It really feels like a little bit of who actually gives a shit and try to handicap that.
Yeah, it's week 18 of the NFL.
It is.
And I typically like I fire full steam out of the All-Star break. I know other players are a little more kind of gun shy, like the season kind of ends for them if they're betting game by game at the All-Star break, because a lot of people who do math-based handicapping of the NBA, like they kind of think things are solved. But I still fire pretty aggressively coming out of the All-Star break. And then at some point in March, usually I'll have a week where I get like a -5. And I'm like, oh, okay, time to stake down, and just ride this thing out. I will kind of find certain games on the calendar that matter, like Spurs Nuggets last week is a great example on Saturday last week. Like that game clearly mattered, and both teams were going to give you kind of playoff polish performance, and that, so there are probably 5-6 games a week where I'm like, yes, like lock in. Hornets Celtics on Tuesday, great example, right? Okay. Like that, like this is going to matter, and we got to get, we're going to get some signal out of this, and the market's wrong, and I'll take full stake bets on sides, but otherwise I'm at like 10th stake usually, from the end of March into the end of the regular season.
So like on a day today where there's 15 games on the card, is there anything that you're looking at or zeroing in on, or just like, we'll see how it develops?
Yeah. So a game I mean, there are games I have circled where I'm expecting full effort, so that you can take that part out you could take that wrinkle out. Yeah. Right. So like, like a week 18 NFL, like the primetime game, that's, win and get in. Like, like I had plenty of skin in Steelers Ravens week 18. Like I treated that like no differently than I would have taken, a game that I really cared about in the middle of the season. But and then, there's also other games like week 18 NFL where you're like, I know this team's going to rest. The market seems to be pricing like they're going to give effort. Like they're not. Like that's Thunder Nuggets, right? Like the Thunder are incentivized to make sure the Nuggets get a clean win today. Like that is clear. And so the market was a little behind on that one. Early
live
on.
betting opportunities too. I always find week 18 NFL live betting correlated stuff. It's its own beast. It really is. It doesn't act like a normal a week. Now, that being said, Drew, play-in, the East play-in is a lot more interesting. The West is pretty solved. It looks like the Suns are the 7 seed. Clippers or Trailblazers will be 8 or 9 seed, and the Warriors as the 10 seed. In the East, it feels like all the way up to the 5th seed, the Raptors are in play. Hawks, Magic, Hornets, 76ers. Only the Heat are pretty much locked into the 10th. Now, when the NFL brought in the wildcard teams, there have been teams that have made runs. Same with baseball. It feels like the NBA did it, but it's just extra games, Drew. Like no one really makes a run. Why do you think that is? And is there one team that maybe has a chance to buck that trend from all the play-in teams?
The best of 7 format in the NBA is as close. It's basically like men's tennis slams, right? Like you figure out who's the better team. It's like the ups, and an upset is possible, but rare. And in general, kind of, stringing together multiple rounds of surprises is very hard. Now I say that, and we were a game away from the Pacers winning it last year, which is kind of insane. Their probabilities of winning the title going into last year's playoffs for me were like in the single-digit percents. Probably low single digits, I would guess. I could actually, now I'm curious, I'm gonna pull it up. I think I was like, let me see. Sorry. Yeah, I have my playoff tabs from last year here. So I was just under 2% for them heading into the playoffs, and then they were a game away. So it's not impossible. But the things are, these teams are relatively solved, and a lot of these teams that are kind of on the outside looking in right now, they don't really have the likelihood of kind of finding an unexpected path to deep playoff runs. That's even saying that, like for me, Charlotte is pretty close to the second best team in the East right now in terms of neutral rating. And
Charlotte would be the one that you think.
And definitely in a world where Charlotte gets to 8 and they're up against the Pistons in round 1 with Cade Cunningham coming back off of this lengthy time off, like I could convince myself to take a piece of Charlotte in that 1-8 series. And then if they draw Cleveland in the next round, like that, the gap between Cleveland and Charlotte is not that great to me. I mean, the market's probably going to have Cleveland like minus 400 or minus 500 in that series. I'm going to be well under that for sure. So my numbers are going to say back Charlotte somehow. But even like knowing that Charlotte's neutral rating is good, like it's also pretty clear that their defense is solvable. And in a best of 7 series, if you have enough offensive pieces to solve their defense, you're going to eventually find your way through if you're Cleveland. So Charlotte's kind of ceiling is they steal a series against the Pistons and then probably lose to the Cavs. But even that's an ask. Like if Charlotte gets to 7, which I think is pretty unlikely but could happen, they would have to finish in the 8 and then win the 7-8 head-to-head to get the 7. If they draw the Celtics in round 1, then forget about it.
All right, humor me for a second here. I'm an Orlando Magic fan.
Okay.
They were like the 3rd favorite in the East to start the year. I don't know how that happened. There was like pricing us like we were the new OKC. I wasn't that optimistic, but there were stretches where we were missing a lot of our best players.
Mm-hmm.
We're now healthy. Is there a path where the Magic just like lock in and can make a run, or is it what would be the fatal flaws of a team like Orlando, who preseason wise of all the teams in the play-in were seen as a contender, and obviously the season didn't go to plan?
Yeah, I think the big thing for the Magic, and like the reason that they were expected to be in the mix in the East is because the East was expected to be so weak, right? Like this, like basically everyone outside of the Pistons and the Celtics is kind of underachieved in the East so far this year. And, that includes the, Magic, Hawks, Cavs, certainly the Cavs, and to a small degree, the Knicks. But the Magic expectation of them being contenders, not just because the conference was weak, but they were expected to have a top 5 defense. I think my rating for them heading into the season was probably top 3 actually. In terms of defense, and injuries aside, like it is still very clear that the defense has regressed for this unit for reasons that I can't really put my finger on. If you want to make a very, very, very kind, rating on them at this moment, they're 10th best defense. That's not going to be good enough, I don't think, to contend in series, because their offense is kind of a known quantity as far as having a relatively low ceiling. Maybe at best they're like 15th. But when you get into a playoff series, if you don't have a good 1-2 option offensively in terms of elite playmaking, then you're going to have trouble when you get to game 6 and 7 in a series. And at some point you're going to find yourself in a close series. So, for the Magic, that's probably round 1, likely against the Knicks. I think the Magic are going to be the 6. The Knicks are a team where your defense is not going to be good enough to keep them under 120. And so you're going to have to find some upside offensively that I just don't think they have.
I think Giovanni put it best. I think some of it was baking in Paolo leap. And I know Paolo made you a lot of money once upon a time, Drew, in the draft.
Yeah.
But he has not taken that next step to his game that I think everybody was trying to bake in with the Magic.
He's a wildly inefficient player. And so if your candy cap is kind of based on efficiency, like it's sad to say this out loud, because again, I have a soft spot for Paulo for sure.
Yeah.
His contract this year is probably going to be the worst contract in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like he's probably worth 20 million a year, and he's going to be compensated at like 55, 60. Like this is going to be one of those where you're like, holy shit, the surplus on this deal is like minus 100 million. Like it's unless he improves, which he could, because he's still pretty young. But I don't know. It doesn't necessarily feel like his style of game has the right way forward. But
I think he needs to be more physical and stop settling for shots. I think he needs to treat himself more like a power forward as opposed to like a playmaking forward. Mm-hmm. That being said, Drew, the NBA, a lot of people don't know this. We like to get optimistic about a bunch of teams. Mm-hmm. But I was actually looking at the history of the NBA. 97.5% of champions have been a top 3 seed. 75% have been the 1 or 2 seed. There's only 2 teams that have ever won outside the top 3 seeds. The 4th seed once, 1969 Celtics, and the 6th seed once. It was the 95 Rockets when Jordan went to go play baseball. So
oh my goodness.
It's a harsh reality, right? We get excited about teams, and I know people are high on Cleveland, who's currently outside a top 3 seed. And there have been teams that have made like runs as 8 seeds, Knicks and San Antonio back in the day, and then obviously the Pacers run. That being said, Drew, outside of the top 3 seeds this year, who's the best team? And are they bettable at current FanDuel futures prices?
I think yes.
Okay, so who is that team for you outside of the top 3 seeds that you think has a shot?
It's the 6 seed Minnesota Timberwolves, probably.
Oh, I like that.
I'm going to be in a weird place in the 3-6 West matchup because everybody believes wholeheartedly that the Nuggets are an actual contender, and I do too. But my gap between Nuggets and Timberwolves is not very big, and the Timberwolves have been a deeply unserious team all regular season. But they look to be like they look to me like they're going to be healthy, and you have enough elite playmaking with Ant on the floor that I think you could surprise a team like the Nuggets, who have a pretty bad defense.
And they're being priced at 60-1. That's basically that's the Thunder are so good. Everyone else is priced pretty, getting pretty good prices. 60-1. Probably about top 4 in the West, you would say, and maybe the 3rd best team in the West.
I would say 4th best in the West, but the 3rd and 4th is a tier that is Nuggets, Timberwolves, in my opinion.
And they happen to have like the 2 things that you need is like A, you need good defense.
Yep.
And B, you have the superstar that is capable of taking.
They have 3 things.
Okay, what's the 3rd thing that I'm missing?
They're on the other side of the bracket from the Thundy.
Oh, yes.
So.
And then, you never know. Happened.
You never know.
Tatum last year. There's you could be an SGA away from like if he gets hurt even for a couple games, a rolled ankle or anything, it changes the entire dynamic of the playoffs. Drew, we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time. Drew Dinsick, NFL, NBA, tennis handicapper, betting analyst for NBC Sports Bet, co-host of the Deep Dive podcast with Andy Molitor. Look forward to seeing you on next week. Jason will not be here, so I don't know who you'll be on with, but I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Best of luck, guys. Enjoy the rest of the Masters.
Take care, Drew. What a wonderful guest. I love talking with Drew. I asked him before the show started if he had anything for the tennis. And I think Drew's, like all of us, preoccupied with the Masters, so he didn't have anything tennis, or else I would have brought him on. Just a reminder before we get to our next guest, we'll be talking UFC 327. Hammer Daily is presented by FanDuel. The most prestigious tournament in golf is happening right now. The best to ever play the game are hitting the green to compete for the jacket. You never know how it's going to go down, but FanDuel has your back with a special mulligan bet back token during the event. Ready to use right now. A bet back token turns any losing bet into a bonus bet for another try. Now you've got protection to take that sleeper pick or make a bold prediction. Backing someone to win it all, go for it. Like someone for a top 5 finish, lock it in with confidence. Because if it doesn't hit, you've got that mulligan in your back pocket ready to go. And maybe you squad ride Patrick Reed with myself and half the guests on the Masters Extravaganza. I didn't originate it, but when the first 5 guests are talking Patrick Reed, I got a little bit excited about him. Hey, anything can happen. Everyone deserves a second chance at glory. Head to FanDuel.com/HammerDaily to get started. That's FanDuel.com/HammerDaily to claim your special mulligan bet back token for Augusta. 21 in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. Opt-in required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 1-877-770-7867 in Louisiana. All right. I am excited to talk UFC 327. Bringing on my next guest. You know him. He's been on the show talking UFC, pro sports bettor, MMA originator, Mr. Andrew Gombas. How are you, my friend? Hey, Andrew.
There we go. Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm looking forward to this card. I'll tell you, Andrew. We lost the co-main event. We lost the title fight after Joshua Van pulled out. And normally, like, that hurts a card severely. But I'm looking at the main card. Every fight is priced nearly at a coin flip except for one. And I actually heard some criticism on Twitter. People are like, I hate how close the odds are. I guess a lot of people either want to bet like a big long shot or like parlay a bunch of heavy favorites. Do you like it when we get a card where it's kind of like a lot of fights feel like anybody could win?
100%. It creates much better opportunity when there's competitively lined fights. I mean, there's just not nearly as much to do with, a minus 600 favorite as compared to, I think there's only one fight on this card that's past minus 250, which is crazy. Like, never really happens that way. But yeah, it's a great card. I would have loved to have had the Van fight still on, but nonetheless, there's a ton of talent top to bottom.
I'm with you. And I have to admit, I am a mark for Yuri Prochazka. I think he's I mean, if like from an entertainment standpoint, all his fights are like a drunken brawl because he just refuses to actual fight like safe or defensive. He's like, let's just figure out what happens. And he's been awesome. The only guy he could never beat is Alex Pereira, who vacates the title, moves up to heavyweight. Everybody else he's beaten. Like, he's beaten Jamal Hill. He beats former top contender Rakic. He knocks out a very tough Khalil Roundtree, and yet he's fighting Carlos Ulberg in a fight that's priced as 50-50. Why is that? Is this a stylistic thing, or is Ulberg just a hidden threat?
No, I think Ulberg's very legit. He ran into a blip early in his career where against Kennedy and Zekchukwu, I think it was actually his first UFC fight, where he was pouring it on in the first round and just totally gassed himself out and ended up losing. But since then, he's won 9 fights in a row, which really, really difficult to do in the UFC. A lot of finishes in there. It just came off of a first round knockout against Dominic Reyes. I think it's a favorable matchup for Ulberg because Yuri doesn't really present much of a grappling threat. So this is going to be a striking fight for the most part. And I think Ulberg's the much better technical striker. I don't love Yuri's recent form. I know that he's won a couple in a row, but he fought a way past it, Jamal Hill, and then was losing pretty badly to Khalil Roundtree. And yeah, I just didn't think he looked particularly good in that fight. He wasn't moving great, and he's always had a style that kind of steers into variance. And I think that it bodes well as you climb up the ranks. It bodes well as an underdog. It doesn't really bode well in like main event title fights. I know he's rolled the dice and won a couple of times, but I don't think that's what happens here.
You mentioned he's losing the Roundtree, pulls it out. He was losing to Glover Teixeira and pulls out a last minute sub. With that being said, he's dangerous. Ulberg has to get him out of here, right? There's no way Ulberg wants this thing going 5 rounds and having that risk where Yuri could just wake up in any moment and have a flurry and end the fight. Do you think this goes the 5 rounds, or do you think Ulberg's going to try to get him out of here?
I don't think it goes the 5 rounds just due to the nature of both guys. It's weird because when you talk about the fight extending being good for Yuri, yes and no. Like, it's not in the sense that Yuri is some like great cardio pace guy, or that Ulberg's necessarily, if he doesn't get him out of there early, he's going to start losing. But it's almost like Yuri has these magical powers to, for lack of a better term, to make stuff happen. And so to that point, I absolutely agree where you don't really want to give him that chance. So I think the more poised Ulberg fights, the more he just fights his fight. I think he should be able to avoid chaos, and I think he'd probably be smart too.
All right, Carlos Ulberg minus 106. Good look there. Let's move on to, I think, pretty interesting. The co-main, I guess, is Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa. Like, this has like banger fight written all over it. Murzakanov has like dynamite in his fist. putting out Rakic in the first round. He's never lost. 12 of his 16 wins have been by KO. He's a minus 210. But Paulo Costa is like weirdly like he only loses to elite guys. Like he loses to Sean Strickland, Whitaker, Izzy. It's not that he's been in great form, but he's so capable of having a really good fight every now and then. That being said, is Mirzakhanov too tough a mountain for Costa to climb?
Yeah, really interesting here because on one hand you have Mirzakhanov who just wins over and over and over. I think he's 6-0 in the UFC, and you have a guy in Costa who, lost a couple, won his last one. I think he's 2-4 in his last 6. But that being said, to your point, Costa has lost to some really elite guys. That's what makes this fight a little bit difficult to read. And, Mirzakhanov is almost tagged as a prospect, which is kind of funny because he's not. Like, he's older than Costa.
Yeah.
He just hasn't really fought that level of competition yet. I think he's skilled. I think he's a deserved favorite here, but I definitely wouldn't trust paying like minus 170 or minus 180 on him here, just given the fact this is such a big step up in competition. And Costa is well-rounded enough to where he has like no big deficiencies that Mirzakhanov can necessarily exploit. That being said, I do think it's a competitive fight, but I favor Mirzakhanov to pull it out. I think he is very skilled. I think this is a stylistic matchup where he's going to look good early. And yeah, I think it's probably a close fight, but I'll go with Mirzakhanov.
It's interesting. These are the fights where it's like a guy who's deemed a prospect, who doesn't have the resume but has looked impressive, fights a guy who's kind of in a middling position in his career but has a pure resume. And sometimes these like super prospects get their first real fight and it's like, okay, it's a reality check. There are tiers and there's levels, and that's what makes fights like this so interesting. Another fight on the card that I always find interesting, and tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm thinking of this overly simplistic. It feels like over the years, fading a guy in his last fight has been very profitable. Like for some reason, bettors get nostalgic about a guy who's on the way out the door. And I just think of many, many guys in their last fight. It's very rare a guy goes out on a win. Cub Swanson is going to be fighting his last fight, fighting Nate Landwehr. What do you think about fights like this? And this is priced as a coin flip, like either guy can win. And Swanson's going to hang him up after this. What do you make of markets like this and guys' last fight? How do you price that stuff?
I don't put too much stock into it. Obviously, I price his age, experience, miles on him, like all that type of stuff obviously gets factored in, but there's no like magical, he's retiring so he's going to lose, or he's retiring so he's going to have extra motivation. Every situation is different. I expect this fight to be like any other fight for him. Obviously he has taken a little bit of a layoff, which at his age it is kind of a cause for concern, but I feel like if he looks how he looked 2 years ago, I favor him here. I build in a little bit of regression as he ages into his 40s, but I think he's going to be the faster guy here. It just comes down to really his current form is, which is a little bit hard to speculate. Landwehr is not a spring chicken either. He's also a tough guy. I expect this to be a fight that either guy can win. Like gun to head, I would favor Swanson, but I think him being like between 51 and 5% is good.
What about stylistically? Are you expecting like a firefight?
Yeah.
Yep. It's priced like it not that it's going the distance, but it's close. It's the under is favored. Because I'm looking at like some of the method of victory stuff, and you're getting interesting prices on the decision and the points. If you had to pick a fighter and a method of victory, do you think it's going to be a finish, or do you think we're going to get to decision here?
I favor finish here. I think given the fact that both these guys kind of go for it, it's going to bode well for that. I guess I'll put it this way. If it does go to decision, I feel like it's one of those fights where both guys had moments where they were rocked, or both guys
Yeah,
had sketchy moments where someone landed big and someone's wobbled. I don't really see this being a fight that plays out ho-hum, tepid, outside striking match. I think these guys are going to get after it.
All right. Dominic Reyes versus Johnny Walker. Dominic Reyes is still in the UFC. I still remember him from having John Jones on the ropes. In his last 7 fights, he's either KO'd somebody or someone has been KO'd. Johnny Walker also is either gets KO'd or KOs the other person. Is there any way this fight doesn't end in someone going to sleep?
I favor it to end inside the distance, obviously. I do think there's a scenario where one or both guys are a little bit timid because they've been knocked out so many times. But I favor Reyes here. I feel like obviously there's a lot of variance given the fact that both guys have power. Both guys have been KO'd a lot. I just think Reyes is the better fighter, though, even at this stage of the game. I think that he's going to be first to the target against Walker, and I think, he's the more likely of the two to land more shots, land more meaningful shots. So it's like, okay, if both their durability is suspect and both guys have a lot of miles on them, it could be like a first to the target kind of thing, where I do think Reyes is probably going to be the first one to the target. But he does find himself in not so great situations sometimes. A guy like Walker can create some chaos. So you never know, but I do think Reyes is their favorite here, and I even probably have him a little bit wider.
Okay. Dominic Reyes, you like him at price, current in market. All right. It's hard to talk about this fight and not first talk about Josh Hokett's antics. What do you like his character? Because to me, he feels like he's cosplaying a character even more so than Colby Covington. Like, there's legit nuts in MMA. And I just think Hokett's putting on an act that I just find, I don't know, it comes across as corny to me, but I wonder how you perceive his antics.
Yeah, it's funny because I typically, growing up and getting into the sport, like, I love the trash talkers like Chael Sonnen, Conor McGregor, Colby Covington. Like, I was really entertained by those guys. Hockett, I could really do without it. I think it is overshadowing the fact that he's really good. I think him getting thrown into a fight with Curtis Blades, who's like a perennial top 5 guy, this early in his career just kind of shows what the UFC thinks of him, and the fact that it's, close to a pick'em. Again, like a guy like Curtis Blades, who's had a ton of success in the heavyweight division. He's a lot of people believe in him, and I think it's justified. I think he's good. Whatever awkward skit, I could do with it or without it. I don't really mind or care, but I think he's legit. I think you can make the case. You can make a case that Blades is like one of the harder stylistic matches for him in the division, given the fact that Blades has a strong wrestling background too, and a lot of heavyweights don't. That being said, I think he's going to win.
He outweighs him too by looks like 25, 30 pounds. This is the fight, right? It's like Hokett's the up and comer who people, are getting excited about, and Blades has the resume. His only losses were Ngannou, Aspinall, Derek Lewis, and Pavlovich, who all knocked him out. Basically, insanely big punchers. This is it. This is the matchup where you throw Hockett in, and if he beats him, then Blades, it makes him legit Hockett, right? This is, if he beats Blades, he's now someone to be reckoned with in the division. Anything on the undercard that's catching your eye? Is there any prices out there that you looked at that you're like, you know what, that's really bettable right now?
On the undercard, I liked he's taking a ton of money by now, but I liked Gamrot a lot at like minus 150, minus 165. Even here, I still think there's a little juice left, but I just think he has such a big, pronounced grappling edge against Ribovics that he's going to exploit. If you take a look back at Ribovic's career, he has one really nice highlight reel knockout head kick against Terrence McKinney, which again was great, but it was 20 seconds, 30 seconds into the fight. Didn't really tell too much. Other than that, I think he's fought a pretty low level of competition. And if you look back at his fight against Kamala Kirk, who is not even with the organization anymore, Kirk grappled him a lot. Even in round 3, Ribovic won the fight, but it was a close decision. And Kirk, the fact that he was able to take him down in round 3, totally gassed, tells me a lot about Ribovic's defensive grappling. Loic Radzhabov took him down 11 times. Obviously, Gamrot is a strong grappler. His top control is not the best, but he's really relentless, and I think that's kind of going to be the story of this fight. Like, I could see him getting 5 or 6 takedowns. And on the feet, I don't think it's as much as I don't think it's so one-sided where, like, every second they're at distance, Ribovic can knock him out. I don't think it's like that, and I quite frankly don't think they'll be at distance for long. If you look at Gamrot's career when he's fought guys, like, obviously, he has his last fight was against Charles Oliveira, who's like a special kind of grappler. But if you look at his fight before that, Ludovic Klein, he controlled him for 9 minutes, shot 11 takedowns. I think if he does that here over 15 minutes, it's going to go really well for him. Obviously, Ribovic could land something. If Ribovic keeps getting back up, he could make the fight interesting. But I just feel like Gamrot's ceiling's really high here. So I made him like 72%.
All right. That's Gamrot. On the main card, you liked Alberg and Josh Hokett at prices. Reyes, was that within range, or was it priced correctly?
Reyes is coming to the other end of it. I made him 61%.
Okay. Let's pull out of UFC 327 for a second. The stories came out this week about like what happened with the Ilia Topuria Islam Makhachev fight. Why is the UFC incapable of setting up these super fights? Like, they can't do what boxing does. They lost the GSP Silva fight. They never pulled the trigger on the John Jones and Ngannou fight. Obviously, the Jones Aspinall fight didn't happen. Jones Pereira, I mean, maybe that's a John Jones problem. And Ilia Islam is like the next major fight that did not come together. What do you think it is where the UFC is incapable of putting together the super fight that frankly everybody wants?
Well, in general, I think they have done a pretty good job of putting together the fights like people want to see. Like, you could even go back to like McGregor Aldo, McGregor Khabib, Pereira versus Adesanya. So there have been some really awesome fights over the last 5 or 10 years where they have got those two guys together. Jones Cormier both times, another example. Recently, I don't know if it's the new model without the pay-per-view, if that has something to do with it. I suspect that it might, because you get these guys who want to, they were getting a piece of the pie, for lack of a better term, that they really aren't now. That's kind of also, unrelated, but why I think McGregor's not on the White House card. But I think that could have something to do with it. Other than that, it's hard. A lot of these guys don't just say yes to any fight. They want a specific number. They want it this way, that way, these circumstances, that circumstances. So I hate to like blame the fighter in that situation, but I think the UFC would love to make the Topuria Makhachev fight if the numbers made sense. I know Topuria was dealing with some stuff outside of the octagon. It's also just kind of hard to get Islam to the cage. He's not a very active fighter, and he hasn't been in quite some time. So I think it's a multitude of reasons, but I want to see that one just as bad as you do.
Is Islam going to be fighting Ian Gary next? Is that the fight?
I don't know if that's next. I feel like that's probably a good direction to go in, just because Gary is one of the few guys in that division that has a little bit of juice behind him right now. And
he fights all the dangerous guys. He doesn't shy away about fighting anyone. I give him credit.
Yeah, which is cool, because his big criticism in his first few fights in the UFC was, he hasn't fought anyone yet. But people say that stuff. Who do you expect to, like, you expect someone to give him like a top 3 guy in his UFC debut? Like, it never happens that way for anyone. But yeah, totally. He stepped up to the challenge multiple times now.
All right. Ilya's fighting Gaethje, where let's just assume he adds him to the long list of legends that he's put away. Arman Sarukian or Islam, who's the more likely next opponent for him?
It's both really good, really hard fights. I think the UFC really does not like Arman. It just kind of depends if Makhachev wants to go down to 155 again or not, which I don't really think he does. He's a big guy. He's later in his career. I'm
Yeah.
not sure he wants to make that cut again.
Those cuts suck when you're in your 30s, long into your career. Is Arman just as dangerous, like where Ilya? Like, part of me thinks that they don't want to put him up against Ilya because they hate it when like a Bilal Muhammad or like these super grapplers take out these super strikers who are way more exciting fighters. Part of me thinks, I know they're mad at Arman for reasons that won't be disclosed, but part of me thinks they're also a little scared that Arman would beat Ilya and they don't want to kill the golden goose just yet.
It's possible. I mean, I was one of the first people like saying that Ilya could become champ someday, even when he had like 1 or 2 fights in the UFC. I do think Arman's a hard stylistic matchup for him. I think he's a hard stylistic matchup for anybody.
Yes.
A lot of these guys, even in like the top 3 or 5, I think Ilya would beat without much problem. I mean, you see the line on him versus Gaethje. It's not exactly competitive, but a lot of people want to see that fight. And I think if the UFC wants to make a big splash over the summer, kind of answer some of the criticism, like you said, about some of the biggest fights not being made, I think that's, you can't really go wrong with Topuria's next fight as long as it's one of those 2 guys.
Yeah. Arman, to his credit, has made himself like a bit of a household name.
Yeah.
He's doing all like the streams, which it sounds dumb, but he's doing the interviews with Nina. He's going over to Real American Freestyle and whooping everybody's ass over there. Like, Arman is like raised his value despite the fact that they won't give him a fight. He's raised his stock. So all credit to him. Andrew, let's leave it there. I look forward to UFC 327 and some of the bigger fights coming up with the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Hopefully it's a great card, and I appreciate you having me on.
Andrew Gombas, pro sports bettor, MMA originator. You can follow him on Twitter at Bets and Picks MMA. Okay, do me a favor. We're going to get into the UFL. If you haven't done so yet, please smash the like button. Helps us out in the algorithm. And you know what? There's going to be a few hosts filling in while Jason's away. I know Alex and Jacob will be doing some special programming for NHL playoffs and NBA playoffs. I know Rob is the most popular fill-in host, but, I really want to be number 2, So smash that like button and help me get more likes than Alex Moretto. That's all I want, is more likes than Alex Moretto, which is difficult because everybody loves edge work and Alex's work there. That being said, let's talk some UFL. 4 games as usual every week. Right now, Orlando Storm are -3.5 at Louisville, total of 39.5. These 2 teams played last week. Orlando won 19-9, but I feel the score was misleading. I gave out the over, but it had a weird second half sequence. So like in the UFL, when you cross the 50, you can no longer punt the ball. You have to go for it. There was like 5 drives in a row where it was turnover on downs from each team in the other team's territory. They went a combined 1 for 6 on 4th downs. There was an INT where the guy gets tackled on the 6-yard line, running it in for a touchdown from the guy, the last man back. Orlando throws an INT from the 1-inch line on 3rd down. Just like, for me, it's the same handicap as last week. I like the over, but shop around. FanDuel is literally the highest price in market, so I will not give it out as a bet. There are some places with a point better where you can get like 38.5s out there, but I do think there will be some scoring in this game. Houston, DC. DC is favored by 7.5. Total of 47.5. Houston is still being undervalued because of their week 1 loss to the best team in the league. They won last week as a 7.5 point dog outright. Now, that being said, a lot of this pricing is Hunter Deckers, their QB who started last week, will be out. Nolan Henderson, who was the week 1 starter, is doubtful. It looks like we're going to get Tua's brother, Talia Tagovailoa, getting the start. DC dominated their game last week, but I think it was very misleading. Houston has a top 3 offense this year in the UFL. And the thing is, no one gets more yards per drive than the Gamblers. They're just not turning them into touchdowns like last week. They settled for 5 field goals. To me, there is an opportunity. I think there is some room for more points to be added. Rest of the market is 6.5 juiced. You're getting a whole extra a point. I really like this line. I make it closer to 4.5, even with Talia Tagovailoa. Plus 7.5, Houston, my first best bet for the UFL this weekend. Columbus at Dallas. I was in denial about Dallas being the best team, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. They moved the ball quite well against an incredible Battlehawks defense. They get a Columbus team that has the worst defense in the UFL. They give up like 6.5 yards per play. They're giving up over 4 points per drive. So teams are averaging better than a field goal on every drive. Like that's pretty atrocious. Dallas should score in bunches. I'm still unsure about what Columbus's offense will do. I just can't get to this number. It's like these are big numbers for a flawed league where I don't know that the elite teams, like in the NFL, an elite team is an elite team. I still think there's some ugly baked into Dallas's play. There's some juice sevens out there. So if you're looking at Dallas, you're going to want to be somewhere else other than FanDuel. But if this line gets to 9.5, 10, I might have interest in backing Columbus. As it stands, no action for me. Last game of the week, Birmingham 2.5, minus 120 at St. Louis, 42.5 is the total. First time I can say it this year. I think the wrong team is favored. I don't like Birmingham at all. I think they're still getting reputational love in the markets. They were 7.5 point favorites last week and lost outright. Now they're favorites again and on the road again, this time against a team with the best home field advantage in the UFL. Birmingham has been a bottom 3 defense this year, giving up tons of yards per drive. No one has had a tougher start to the season than St. Louis. I still think they're being undervalued. They played DC, the defending champs, and then Dallas. Hakeem Butler returned for the Battlehawks. I thought he looked good. I thought they had a ton of drive killers on third down, like open drops by their wide receivers. So even though Dallas beat them by 16 last week, that game felt more like a one-score game the entire game. And I think that the final was misinterpreted. I think some of the variance will balance out. The Battlehawks win outright and comfortable. Give me the 2.5 plus 100 here as my second best bet. And I think the money line price is at plus 145 is good. This is also best price in market if you like St. Louis, because there's 2s out there in market and or flat 2.5. So one of the best prices in market. I'll tell you what I'm doing tonight besides watching the UFL. I am a big space nerd. I find it fascinating that our human race 125 years ago didn't have cars, and within 125 years we're launching people into space. Artemis returns tonight, 8:07. It'll be on TV. Their return into the atmosphere. I just think the science of it. This is dangerous, right? You got to get back. You got to handle the speed as which you're coming into the atmosphere, not to burn up. Then they got to handle the landing properly. I'm excited. All this stuff fascinates me. I know that if I was around in the 60s when they went to the moon, or for some people who still doubt that we ever went to the moon, I would have been glued to my TV then. I am glued now. I look forward to that. That's my viewing for tonight. That being said, maybe you're Orthodox. You have Easter this weekend. Maybe you'll be watching Masters. Tons of things to do. Thank you to the audience. You've been amazing. Jason Cooper is not back next week. I'll be hosting on Monday. Then Alex and Jacob hosting a couple days, doing something special to get you ready for NBA, NHL playoffs. Dare I say an extravaganza maybe? I think Rob's going to step in again for another episode. That being said, that's it for us. I hope you enjoyed today's show. New episode of Circle Back came out earlier today. Go check that out now on the Circles Off YouTube channel. We'll redirect you there. I think it was Flup, Mr. Peanut, and Kanish. And Jason apparently gets roasted, so I'm looking forward to that. Thanks to Mike Bennett for producing. Thanks to our sponsor, FanDuel. And thank you to everybody. You have a great rest of your day.